And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Tuesday morning, IFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic Ocean, and IFR here all along the Alaska Range down into the Talkeetnas, Western Copper River Basin, Matanuska Valley down into Prince William Sound there, and along the North Gulf Coast into the northern and eastern southeast coast. Some VFR up here over the northwest interior there from the northwest coast right down across Norton Sound into the Yukon Delta, and then to the south and west, marginal VFR. Then a break here for some VFR, Adak and Atka, back into the marginal VFR for the western Aleutians. And then for tomorrow, as you can see, conditions improve here along the Alaska Range. We're still holding on to some IFR there, right along the central and northwest range there, and also a diminished area of IFR now from Prince William Sound along the North Gulf Coast into the extreme northern southeast coast, becoming VFR over the southern half of the Panhandle, marginal VFR here in the east central interior, surrounded by VFR all the way around, and marginal VFR here, eastern Bering Sea along the west coast down to the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and VFR out to the west. Let's see if that holds until into Wednesday morning, and no, it doesn't. Goes considerably diminishes here for the conditions, with a lot of IFR here now sliding in from the western Aleutians to Adak, and some IFR here near the Pribilof Islands up towards St. Matthew Island. Otherwise, marginal VFR over the interior with three distinct areas of IFR: North Slope, Brooks Range, and Upper Tanana Valley area, and along the Alaska Range. And another one here over the mid to lower Yukon River Valley. And then for the southeast coast, looking rather marginal for Wednesday morning. And for the afternoon, improvement here for the Panhandle with VFR breaking out over a fair amount of the area there, but lower conditions up to the north with, again, IFR for the North Gulf Coast and along the Alaska Range here down to Kamishak Bay, marginal for Kodiak Island, and IFR pretty well entrenched still for the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and marginal VFR over much of the Bering Sea there from the Seward Peninsula all the way down to Adak and Atka, eastward here into Kodiak Island, and then a narrow band of IFR out over the west central Aleutians. For passes for Anatuvik, IFR becoming marginal tomorrow, and IFR for Adigan, again improving, becoming marginal VFR, especially on the southern entrances of both passes. To the north, probably staying at IFR the entire day. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, trending toward VFR through the afternoon. Rainy IFR to maybe marginal VFR in the afternoon, and windy, same forecast as rainy. Isabel, same forecast as windy. IFR maybe going to marginal conditions later in the day. And for Mentasta, marginal VFR becoming VFR. And for Tanita, marginal VFR hopefully becoming marginal or VFR in the afternoon. And for Portage, looks like IFR conditions holding through the day Tuesday. Same thing for Chilkoot and White. And for the freezing levels here, about 2,000 feet over the western half of the state here out into much of the Bering Sea down to the eastern Aleutians, and 4,000 to 6,000 feet here down across the eastern North Gulf Coast into the southern Panhandle. Out over the Aleutians, about 2,000 to 3,000 feet, central and western Aleutian areas there. And for the icing, nothing expected of any significance out to the west here. Otherwise, with the jet shifting southward there, heaviest icing will be there into the coast of British Columbia. Otherwise, isolated moderate rime or mixed icing possible here for the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast and across the Kenai Peninsula and into the maybe the northern Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range. Also an elevated threat of some possible isolated moderate icing there for the western North Slope and Arctic coastal areas. And the jet stream here, low pressure still holding south of the Kenai Peninsula, both at the surface and even up to 33,000 feet here. And still looking at some pretty good south-southwest winds, 130 to 140 knots there coming across the southern panhandle, but much lighter with the main jet, as you can see, south of the forecast area here. So that keeping any heavy precipitation off to the south. And for the 9,000-foot winds, northerlies here, 30 to 35 knots from the Bering Strait, stronger here just off the southwest coast across the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty light over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And south winds 35 knots over the eastern Copper River Basin, and also a portion of the Panhandle there with the stronger winds down into Canada and British Columbia. And for 3,000 feet, northerly winds here at this elevation, 20 knots there along the northwest coast, increasing to 30 knots there down along the southwest coast, and then northwest, 40 knots blowing across the Alaska Peninsula. And pretty light, very light elsewhere. High pressure out to the west, so light winds for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. So looking at turbulence, maybe some isolated moderate turbulence possible there, southern Seward Peninsula into the Yukon Delta. Better chances you head south here with considerable moderate. A good bet there for the Alaska Peninsula and possibly around Akiak-Sitkinak there in southwest Kodiak Island. Still a little bumpy there on up into Kamishak Bay.